welcome to the Bella Grace podcast, where we are empowering you to embrace the beautiful grace found in recovering your authentic self by building a sober life and having fun doing it. I totally blanked on my own intro.
I love it.
Hey, this is real life.
This is real life.
Yes. So we have my friend Arthur back. Yay!
What's up, y'all?
If you have not heard his story, you should go back and listen to it. I will link it in the show notes. It is a two-parter because we talked and talked and talked.
Well, more specifically is I talked and talked and talked, and I don't think I let you talk at all. I was listening to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I ramble a lot. And I was like, that's bad. So this podcast, I promise to do better. Don't give up on me.
It's fine. We loved it. It was great. It was amazing. So if you haven't heard his story, go back and listen to that.
Ooh.
Yep, because it's really good, and you're gonna want to listen to that and have some gaps filled in. I don't know what we're gonna just go all over the place today.
All over the place. First off, I do want to give a shout out to my homie Serge. This is the shirt right now that I'm sporting is his creation. He is the madman behind this piece, and his company is called Obsolete Streetwear. You can find him on Instagram at Obsolete Streetwear. Really cool guy. Actually, when I got into like collecting vintage clothing, I guess this was back in 2018, 2019. He was one of the few people that I met in the scene. We met at a convention, at the DFW Vintage Swap Meet convention, actually. And at that point, we were both so new to like collecting, I think, vintage clothing, but also selling it, as a business. Mm-hmm. And I think we both kind of met each other. We were checking each other's boots out. I mean, at that point, I think maybe I had a couple racks, maybe a little table, and it was just super it's super amateur looking. It was very like not official. It wasn't professional, but hey, like I was out there doing it. And I met Sergio. He stopped by the booth and he was like, hey man, like, what's up? Like, my name's Sergio. And like, we talked, we clicked, and he was just really, really nice. And we like learned a lot about just trading and selling and just a lot about like the vintage culture, I think, like during those years, especially when we were so new. But he really like inspired me actually, because I was like, this is a younger guy. Like, he's a much younger guy than I am. I could just tell. And he like, to be able to be young and to be able to like step out of your comfort zone and start your own business and put yourself out there. Like, I give a lot of credit to those people who can do that, because when I was a young person, like I didn't put myself out there at all. Like I was like, I think afraid of what people were going to think or what they were going to say, mixed with a little bit of like laziness, and just like, I wouldn't like want to like do that because I'm like, nah, like it's fine. Like I'll just, I'll let things pass by. And I think that's how it's always been in my life.
Yeah.
Probably up until my mid to late 20s. I guess late 20s it started to change. Like I started to feel more confident in who I was. I think also because like, I think I talked about this last time, I wasn't a confident person unless I had like liquor in my system, unless I had beer in my system, unless I had weed in my system, unless I had coke in my system. And I think that's another thing that I didn't talk about. My resume, all the types of like things that I did.
Your bad boy resume?
Yeah, my bad boy. So I'll quickly touch on it because like I have no problem being vulnerable, like talking about what I've done in my past. I think like when you have control over the narrative, nobody has control over that. So You know what I mean? So for me, like we all know, like it started off with drinking, and then after drinking, then it started into like smoking weed. So I smoked weed like in high school and a lot in college, right? And so like, and then actually I started doing coke. I think it was in 2006. Yeah, 2006. Because I knew some friends who like were dealing it and they were selling it, and like it was at parties, and they were like, they had it out, and I was like, okay, interesting. Like this was like kind of like mind shocking, but also too, like I wasn't scared to try it. Also because like one of my favorite movies growing up was Scarface. And I watched that movie every single day for like, I think a year and a half straight. I think it also didn't help that we didn't have cable. So like we were limited to what we could watch.
You watched the same movie.
Yeah. You had DVDs. So you'd pop in, okay, today's Scarface day. I'm not going to watch Pineapple Express or whatever it was we were watching. So like, I kind of idolized that lifestyle of like, ooh, like this guy came out of nowhere and he like built himself up, and then like he started like getting like money and he started acting like a boss, and he was a boss because he could buy this, buy that. Of course, if you watch the whole movie through, it doesn't end in a good ending. But like when you're young, you just think like, oh, like maybe I could just be able to do that.
Different.
Yeah, I'll be different. I'll be able to control myself. I'll be able to like do this, do that, right? So, so like it was always there, I think, at parties and stuff like that. I think the biggest wake-up call I had was I was rolling with this guy. We were on our way to a party. The guy ends up losing the baggie, and he tells me to pull over, and he gets out in the middle of the street and just takes his pants off and just looking for the baggie. He's like profusely looking for it. He has his like, you know, he asked me to turn on the high beams. He's like, where did it go? Where did it go? And at that point I was like, I think this is a problem. I think this is not normal. You know what I mean? Like, not that I had a lot of sense back then, but I'm telling you, like, the little sense that I had, I was like, gosh, that doesn't look real. But once I think it was out of sight and out of mind, I think I didn't touch it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, for me, at least that point, like, once I didn't have access to it, once I moved out and went to Denton, like, I didn't really mess with it. And then, you know, the whole, I guess when I was in Denton from 2010 to 2013, like, it was rave culture was big, right? During those years. And so you would go to like rave clubs, and then you'd be standing in line and people were offering you pills. And I think that freaked me out more than Coke, because I remember whenever I told y'all this last time, and if you haven't listened to my last podcast, go back and listen to it. But I detail whenever I was in school, in middle school, 8th grade, I remember one of my friends and another friend, they actually ended up collapsing from overdosing on pills. So I think that memory was always in the back of my mind as to why I didn't actually partake in pills. I kind of freaked myself out, I guess, thinking like, I don't know what's going to happen with a pill, and I don't know what's in it. And just, not to say that I knew what was in weed and what was in Coke, I guess, like I didn't know that either, but at least at that point, at least that's what it meant. So for me, and so like, like I remember I wouldn't touch, but I was always offered like in lines at the clubs. I mean, I remember back in those years, like Afterlife was a popular, I think, club. I think that's what it was called, Afterlife. Insomnia was another one.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that one?
So I was a big raver in high school and into my boyfriend that I was telling you about just now.
Yeah.
I was a junior in high school when he was 19. So he was 2 grades older than me. So I was a junior. He made friends with a nightclub owner, and it was an EDM nightclub.
Well, yeah.
And so I was a junior getting into the nightclub as 21, but we weren't drinking. We were doing other things.
Yeah.
We were rolling. We were
rolling. Yeah.
Doing ecstasy and listening to the EDM. Like, that's what we did.
Yeah.
So I always tell people that we're the mommies of the ravers that were born in the 2010s. Like,
but you know what? Yeah, and I never did it. The only thing we did is what we would do is like we would have 4 Locos in the car. We'd pregame, and then we
remember your 4 Loco story.
Yeah, remember the 4 Loco story? Yeah. So like we would do that and go into the club. Of course, that would wear off. But yeah, like we didn't get into them for some reason. And the people that I was with, but like it was like when you went into like a rave club. Of course, you got the music go, and then you have like the light shows, right? The light shows are going on. Like the guys with the finger gloves are doing this, and I guess it's like it enhances the effect of when someone's on ecstasy, I'm guessing, because it's super stimulating to the mind, right?
Yeah.
I never done it, so I don't know. But I'm guessing
it enhances all of your senses.
All of your senses.
Yeah, all of them. So you'll see people that are rolling with like Vicks under their eyes or under their nose because it amplifies that feeling. Or they're sucking on pacifiers because it stimulates your mouth.
I remember that.
The visuals with it stimulates your eyes. Like everything is just overly stimulated. Yeah. Everything. Every one of your senses.
And when you describe it, it's hard not to get, I guess, addicted to something like that. Yeah. Especially, I guess, if you're in a place in life where, like, maybe you're just sick of the norm and you want to feel something, or you're just numb to what's happening in your life. So, like, I know, like, for me, like I talked about last time, is like drugs and alcohol was an escape because it just provided, I guess, enjoyment for that time. But then it was like, it was pain afterwards. It was like anger afterwards. It was regret afterwards that followed it. It was always that story. I remember one time we left Insomnia because Insomnia, this is a rave club, right? It would open, I think, at midnight or 1 a.m, and it would close at 8 a.m, right? And I remember we stayed the whole night. We left like 8 a.m, and talk about like just feeling so defeated, leaving a club like 8 a.m, the sun is out, you've been partying, you just feel like, man, I just feel lower than dirt. Like I just feel like I did nothing with my life and I just like partied away. At least that's how I felt. And then I remember like walking out and there was an ambulance parked outside and the kid had overdosed that morning, that night. I was like, wow, I think that was another wake up call for me whenever I was like in that scene, like even though like I didn't want to let go of partying, but there was so many signs that were popping up like telling me, hey, like this ain't the way, this ain't your lifestyle, like back off, G, like, you know. But I was hard-headed and like I did it. I still would party and I still would drink and I would just like kept telling myself like, oh, maybe I can just control this, control that. But no, like for me now, it's like now that I think about what I used to do back in those years and compared to today, you know what's funny is that you can still be tempted to want to return to that lifestyle even after all those years. Maybe not like everything. I think like there's certain things that I don't miss, but like for instance, like alcohol is a big thing. I think that's kind of like tempting. And I noticed it recently because I just got back from Europe a couple weeks ago. And so I had a chance to go see Spain. I had a chance to see Paris.
And you did it in style.
And it was fun. It was fun. I was just kind of like going with the flow. I mean, it was beautiful. I need to talk to Merriam-Webster's dictionary because I don't think there's enough words to describe just how beautiful it was out there.
The history and just the architecture and it's so different than here. It's
so different. If you've never, yes, you listening, if you've never taken an international trip in your life, do it. Because it's gonna change the way you think, the way you look at life. And I think more than anything during that time, I guess this was like mid to end June when I started, when I went, and then I came back like beginning of July. I really needed like a break. I really needed to like kind of reset. And when I went over there, I mean, first of all, you're removed from everything that you've known is normal. Like your surroundings are different. Forget about, you take a trip from here to, you know, New York or Florida. I'm just picking those states. I'm not picking on them exclusively, but I'm just saying, example, like, it's still gonna be similar. It's a city, right? Yeah. You know how a city works. You know how the people.
You know what the signs say.
You know what the signs say, right? So it's not too different. It's not too out of your norm, right? It's not gonna be too much of a culture shock for you, which is why I'm telling you that you should take an international trip. Why? Because when you get out of your comfort zone and you get placed in a different country, it's legit going to like a different planet. Yes. That's how it felt for me. I went over there, I felt like I was an outsider. I did not know how any of this worked. First of all, like when I went to Spain, we took a bullet train from Madrid to Valencia. And Valencia, they respect the heck out of the siesta. So for those of you who don't know, in Spanish culture, a siesta is typically a break that happens between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And what happens is everything shuts down. The whole city shuts down. Everybody goes home. Everybody is with family, rests, takes a break. And it's from 2 to 5 every day. And people follow that religiously. I didn't know that. And so, like, when I was over there, I think we had left and ate lunch and we came back. We tried getting an Uber. It was like, no.
It shuts down.
They were like, imposible. It was like they hung up the phone. And I was like, what? And then we found out, like, the siesta. It's like, okay, so we had a nice 30-minute walk back to the Airbnb. So that was fun. But we saw a lot of the city. And so, like, Valencia was really cool. Then we saw Madrid. Madrid was really dope. Valencia and Madrid, I mean, it wasn't that much of a culture shock besides that and, like, the water and historical buildings. I'm only saying that because, like, I know Spanish. And so you can kind of get around. But even then, like, their Spanish is different. Like their Spanish is like they speak very fast, first of all, and they kind of talk with a lisp, but it's not a lisp. It's like me saying Valencian Spanish is Valencia. They would say it like Valencia.
Yeah.
And it's like a th sound,
like
right?
Ibiza. They say
Ibiza.
Ibiza,
Yes.
and we say Ibiza.
Yeah, exactly. Good example.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Madrid, they didn't follow the siesta too closely. Things didn't shut down, so you can still get around. You won't be lost there.
Yeah. It's a little bit more touristy.
It's a little bit more touristy. But back to the topic at hand. Yeah, like wine was big over there.
That's what I was gonna ask. How was it going sober over there? Because their culture revolves around alcohol. Kids drink alcohol. It's part of life.
Yeah, it's part of life. Okay, so Spain wasn't too bad. I feel like it wasn't in my face. Paris actually wasn't too bad, and Paris actually had mocktail options.
Oh.
Like you
That's
would.
impressive.
Yeah, like every place I went to, when I opened up the menu, it said mocktails, and then it had like maybe 4 or 5 options, but they had options.
Yeah.
Like every place I went to, I was like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. Like it's when you go to Dallas and you go out to eat, they don't sometimes even have mocktails written out in the menu. You gotta ask the waiter, like, hey, is there mocktails on the menu? You kind of feel like you're ordering something like off the cuff, like kind of like super secretive. And then sometimes they'll be like, no, and then you're like, well, can you put like a Red Bull and like a fruity drink in it? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. Okay, cool. So you know what I mean?
Like
So you have to tell them
how to make your drink.
Exactly. But like I think, and then was Rome? Yeah, Rome was, I think, worse in terms of like there was a lot of wines over there, and I think because they're known for their wines and just known for alcohol. And it was like I remember asking for mocktails. They didn't know what that was, and they were like, do you want Sprite? I was like, no, it's okay.
No,
I was trying to describe. I was like, do you have something like, like non-alcoholic? They would just point me to Sprite. They would point me to water, like mineral water. So mineral water is huge in Europe. Paris, like, so for instance, like if you're in Rome,
if you ask for water, they will give you bubble water. Yeah, you have to ask for flat water.
You have to ask, so you go and you sit down, and what you say is like agua minerale, sin gas, you know what I mean? So that means water, without carbonation. But they have a plethora of like legit mineral water. And it's so good. It's like, it tastes so pure. It tastes like you're drinking oxygen. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing was like sitting around people and them drinking. And I think that's not new because I sit around people and they drink all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I was in a different country and, different languages are being spoken. And so it's like you're in a different environment, a different vibe. You're almost like, I feel like I'm missing out of this part of the world if I don't drink. Like you know what I mean? It's like, it's like going to Italy. It's like going to Rome and saying, I'm not going to try the pizza. I'm not going to try the pasta. What are you talking about? Like, that's what they're known for. Which, by the way, pizza and pasta is way, way different than here.
Yes,
it is. And let me explain why. I can eat a whole pizza by myself. I don't feel full. I don't feel lethargic. I feel like I can still, I'm not in a food coma. I feel like I can still keep going. I don't know what it is in the ingredients.
Processed over there.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Like, we add so much crap to ours. Over there, it's pure, authentic, just very basic ingredients. They don't add a bunch of crap to it.
They don't. Yeah, like, I noticed, like, when I was eating that, or when I would... Like, my favorite pizza was the Diavola pizza. Like, it's, like, spicy salami. And it was so good. It was just so fresh, and it just felt like I could eat, like, 4 or 5 boxes of it, and I'd be fine. The pasta is really good. It's just, it doesn't feel heavy in your stomach. You know what I mean? And I would know that because like we do lots of walking those days. We were like 3 days in Rome. We do lots of walking in the heat. You know what I mean? And it's just like we didn't feel fazed by what we were eating and stuff like that.
Our diet is so much different over here. Like, we have so many, even if you don't even realize it. There's like preservatives and added chemicals and this and that and all this stuff. Like, even making stuff fresh from home. Like, there's a huge difference between like the flour that I get from Italy at the mall versus the flour that we get at like Kroger when we make pasta, because my husband got me a pasta press. So we've made pasta twice, and we've made it once with like real Italian authentic flour.
Nice.
And then with like American flour. And even just the flour, you can tell a difference.
You can tell the difference. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret. I think it has a lot to do with like the flour, and you know, like if you buy pasta from the store, it's already made, you know, so you're not like rolling it yourself. Yeah, and so it's technically not good for you, I guess, but like that's one of the things that I loved about Europe. It was like the littlest things, the simplest things. Like me explaining it to you, it sounds like I'm overhyping it, or I'm like going above and beyond, but I'm not. Like a croissant in Paris, like for instance, will be about 8-9 euros. It's pretty pricey, but it's so good. It's fresh. It's like, I don't know, like
handmade.
Yeah,
it's like, it did not come from a box that was frozen and then they stuck it in the oven.
Yeah, like I mean, and then it's like, and I had a conversation recently. I had lunch with my friend Bruno, and I was asking him because he had went to Europe too, like recently, and I asked him, am I going crazy, or are the croissants really good in France, or is it just me? He's like, no. He's like, you're absolutely right. You know why? He's like, I ordered a croissant when I was in Brazil, and he's Brazilian, and he's like, I ordered one thinking it was going to be, you know, somewhat the same. He's like, no, it was crap. It was like super like dry. It had no taste, and that's what I think when I think of croissants. I'm like, I think of like this dry bread, whatever. No, this is like buttery. Such an inviting,
buttery,
taste. Yeah, it's so
just like,
good.
Yeah, light and airy. And it's got the air pockets in it.
Yeah.
I love a good croissant.
I could eat 20 of them. Like that's I love to eat.
But it also has to do, so cooking also has to do with the environment. People don't realize this.
Ooh,
but like,
yes, let's get into that.
So I used to make candy for Christmas, homemade candy, like this hard cinnamon candy that like is really spicy.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I can't make it here.
Why?
Because it's too humid in Dallas.
Oh.
And hard candy requires a very dry atmosphere. So in Lubbock, I would make caramels, I would cut them into little squares, and I would put pecans on some of them, and I'd wrap them up for Christmas, and I'd give them out to my coworkers and my family. Like, I used to make like pans and pans and pans of caramels and hard cinnamon candy and divinity, and like for Christmas, that's all I did was make candy and cookies. And here, I can't make them because they will never harden enough because it's too moist here. In the winter.
So you almost need like a controlled environment for.
And so plays a role in how croissants taste over there too, because of where they're at in the world, the way the air is, the atmosphere there, it just cooks different.
You're gonna make me start preaching because that could have been a sermon right there. I mean, thinking about environment is everything to your authenticity. We're going to talk a lot about authenticity today.
Oh, perfect segue.
Yeah, the perfect segue is authenticity. Environment plays a huge factor on who it is that you are. I mean, and that's what authenticity is. It's who you are as a person, your values, your beliefs, like everything, all of that combined into one. That's what makes you you. That's what makes you unique. Every person is unique, right? But what I love about what God's word says is like, you know, God says like, hey, like you are wonderfully made, you are fearfully made, you know, I've chosen you, you know, and so God says a lot about our authenticity. He's like the author of our lives, and he's the creator of our lives. So I love what God's word is when we can turn to the text and we can actually have like an actual like format for our lives. I think that speaks a lot, especially if you're in a season where you're kind of like maybe lost and you don't know who you are. And I know a lot of people like that in Dallas. I know a lot of close people who are like that actually, who kind of struggle to find who it is that they are. And I'm not talking about like necessarily like your identity. Like you could say like, oh, I'm a child of God, and they know that, and then they say, but like sometimes I don't know like my passions. I don't know what it is I love to do. I don't know my hobbies, like, you know. And so like
you're just existing.
You're just existing.
You go to work,
going through
you
the
come
flow.
home, you watch Netflix, you drink a glass of wine until you pass out, you wake up the next morning, go to work, and it's a job that you somewhat might maybe enjoy, maybe you hate it, but we're just floating through life, not knowing who we truly are.
Right. And that's why I'm such a big champion of traveling. And I think it's because you are literally disrupting your routine. Mm-hmm. You're literally disrupting your routine. You're getting placed into a new environment where maybe you don't have access to maybe all the drug dealers that you know, or maybe you don't know, or maybe you're removing yourself from toxic situations at work, maybe you're removing yourself from toxic situations with family, whatever it is, right? Yeah. You're taking that mental break for yourself and you're getting immersed in a whole brand new culture. And I'm saying culture because you should consider, if you have the means, to go and take your international trip, because like me, I was really astounded what I found out whenever I was over there. I found out a lot of things, I think, about myself. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to you, Teresa, because honestly, like, the last podcast we did got so much great feedback. And I've had people reach out to me, like, still to this day, actually just last week, telling me, like, I just listened to your podcast. Oh my gosh, it was so incredibly inspirational. It was so good. Like, I had no idea you went through this, and you know what? Like, I was going through this and I was going through that. Like, and just listening to you just gave me so much hope. It just gave me so much like motivation to like do something with my life. And I was like, you know, I'm glad. I'm so thankful that for you. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and that's what God offers us. It's like He offers us power by giving our testimonies, and that's why we know, like, our testimony shouldn't be covered and hidden. It should be something that we share, right?
And we just pour it out,
glorify, yeah. And so, you know, I want to give a big shout out to you because you offered that platform for me, and you gave me that chance to give my story, because I think by me giving my story and having this platform to give it on, it's like so many people were touched by it. You know what I mean? It's like so much good came from this, and so like.
You never know who's on the other side of this screen.
You don't know.
That needs to hear what you have to share.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so from that, when I was traveling in Europe, you know, I was still getting like some nice messages from people about like the podcast interview and everything like that. And what I love about traveling is like, I feel like you have a lot of time to reflect. You have a lot of time to think. You have a lot of time to like ask yourself questions. And then for me also, like, I spend a lot of time also with God. I think like I don't vacation, and for anybody who does this is totally fine. This is just me. Like, I don't vacation away from God when I go on vacation. I just try to make it a point to, like, at least I'm gonna pray, or at least, you know, I always bring my Bible, so I'm gonna like maybe read a text or two, you know, and maybe meditate on the verse or something like that. I think one of the powerful prayers that I started praying when I was in Europe was like, God, put the people, or God, I want you to put me in front of people that you want me to be in front of, that you want me to share your light to.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to pray that prayer, because a lot of times, like, I was running into people who maybe were having such a bad day. So what I mean?
Yeah.
They were having like, maybe they had a short temper that day, or, you know, it was Uber drivers who just were like, and so, but like, after I would pray that prayer and I just would remember that throughout the day, I would think, oh, okay, like, you know, this person I'm running into is, you know, for a reason. You know what I mean? Even if I can't talk to them about God, maybe I can make them smile. You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say. I think a lot of times people shy away from quote unquote evangelizing because they think it is like the people sitting in the middle of Bourbon Street in New Orleans on the microphone screaming, "You're going to hell." And I don't think that is what God intended for all of us. Maybe some, you know, like I just don't think that that's how God intended for us to share His love. Yeah. Because that's not how He shared it. Exactly. He shared it by having dinner with the tax collector, by being friends with the prostitute.
It's like a conversation.
Yes.
It's not like me yelling down your throat.
No, He didn't scream at Mary Magdalene that she needed to change her ways, you know.
I'm praying to God that I run into someone on a megaphone. I remember when we were in California. I remember like I think we drove past somebody on the megaphone, but we were on our way somewhere, and we didn't stop. But like, let there be a chance, let there be an opportunity where I'm just walking down the street. I just want to have a conversation with that person, and I feel like we would both learn a lot.
Yeah,
and I think I just want to learn what it is where you're coming from, because I'm sure like that passion and fire is coming from something. Yeah. But it's like, I'm sure it's a deeper story that, you know, they probably have yet to share, and they're not sharing because they're yelling about what everybody else is doing wrong, but yet you weren't human. You didn't go through anything either. Did anybody yell at you? When they did that make you change?
Yeah.
So
it happened to us in New Orleans on our way back because we just got back from Gulf Shores.
Yeah.
And we drove through New Orleans on our way back and spent the night there. It's one of our favorite cities. Like, we love it. We used to go at least once a year, if not twice a year. But we hadn't since COVID. So it was our first time back since before COVID. And it was my first time in New Orleans sober.
Nice.
And I was really surprised to see how many mocktail options there were in New Orleans.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's changing.
It's changing.
It's changing just since we last talked about it. I feel like last time we talked about how like menus are lacking mocktail options, but I feel like we're at the beginning stages of it, and I feel like there's going to be more to come.
Yeah, there were a lot of... So we're drinking the Dos Equis, like it's 0 salt and lime.
Our sponsor of the podcast today is Dos Equis. Dos Equis, if you want to cut us a check, just saying.
But this one is really good, and like we made it into like a little michelada. It's Bloody Mary mix with the beer and chamoy and tahini. But there were actual like non-alcoholic beers at bars in New Orleans, and like the bartender.
Check New Orleans out.
Yeah,
I haven't been.
But yeah, we were walking down Bourbon Street and the guys were like screaming. One of them like grabbed me by the arm and was like, "You're whatever," like screaming. And I was like, "Let go of me." Like, no, this is not the way you spread Jesus' love.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. Yeah, and it's interesting how, in the Bible, I love this one verse in the Bible. It says, like you can turn away wrath, you can turn away anger with a soft answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not always about matching somebody's energy. It's sometimes it requires a soft response, or sometimes it requires no response.
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus did that a lot of times.
Yeah.
Whenever it came to I'll talk about it a little later because I want to talk about this one story, but it's so good. But back to what I was telling you, I wanted to give you your props because I think it was not only you. I feel like my whole life, I feel like I've kind of lived an interesting life. I've met interesting people. I've had interesting experiences. Y'all have heard the stories. Mm-hmm. And then traveling, it's only kind of magnified that as well. Mm-hmm. It's made me also have more interesting encounters with people and interactions with people. And when I'm traveling, I often get like lots of thoughts of wisdom that I feel like are given by God that I feel like would go to waste. Do I not share them if I don't share them? So I'm currently working on a book.
Yay!
And I'm on page 5 of the book.
Yay!
Out of 300.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like, but I started it.
But you've started it.
I started it. The idea, the whole concept was birthed. I think it was birthed in Paris, and it was birthed because I remember we were at the Eiffel Tower. Mm-hmm. And we went up the Eiffel Tower. First of all, for those of you who don't know, like half the Eiffel Tower is flights of steps, and then the other half you can take the elevator. But it's a lot of steps. It's a lot of flights of steps.
I will never go up to the top
because
I can't do stairs.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's you definitely have to be ready. I feel like mentally to do it because it can be a little physically taxing on your body. But on our way down, we saw the beautiful view from the top, you know what I mean? You can see the sea and river, you can see all the different cool little places. But we're going down the elevator. And this elevator is kind of old. There's like so many people on this elevator. It's like packed. It's a pretty big elevator. It's bigger than the standard elevator you would see, like, you know what I mean, at different places here. But it's like one of those cage elevators, so you can kind of see the view. And we're all going down, and when we're going down, you just hear so many different languages happening all at once, and it was just so beautiful. I was just listening. You could hear Dutch, you could hear French, you could hear Spanish, you could hear Portuguese, you could hear German. Like, it was just so many languages all at once, and it was like, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, how diverse, we all are made so unique, like in our own like way. And so like, we're going down. Before we make it to the bottom, before we're descending, before we make it to the bottom, the elevator jolts. Like, there's this big jolt. Yeah. And everybody's
my biggest fear.
Yeah. And so like, then at that moment, you hear everybody go gasp. Like, like, you know what I mean? Everybody gasps. Everybody looks alarmed. And you know what? it didn't matter how different anybody looked at that moment. It didn't matter how different anybody was. We were
all the same.
so alike than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so beautiful to see, like, you know, we have these individualistic traits, but at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, you know, growing up in our own, like, bubble, like, we could tend to think, oh, like, this person is so different from me. They're not going to understand me. Or this person is from a different, you know, part of, you know, of class, of, you know, of money, whatever. And you just think, oh, they're not going to understand me for this and that reason. And it's like, no, it's like, we're more alike than what we think. And you just don't know it. And anyway, so, like, that thought came to my mind. And I was like, wow. So, like, I'm going to put this in the book. And so, like, and it just had so many different, like, things come to my mind when I was out there in Europe. Like, for instance, like, I didn't know that euros were worth more than the dollar. And it was, like, cool, like, to look at the euro, because if you ever seen euros, like, I don't have one on me, but they're so colorful, you know. They're smaller than the dollar, I think, because they're more rectangular, but they're very colorful. And they look really cool. And I think I said this in an Instagram story. I was basically telling people, like, it doesn't matter how different you look. It doesn't matter how, you know, interesting or funny you think you may look. Like, you know, your worth is not based in that. You know what I mean? Your worth is based on what God says. Like, take a look at the euro. Like, it looks kind of funny. It looks like Monopoly money. It doesn't even look real. Like, the texture of it, it feels like saran wrap. Like, that's what it feels like to me. It doesn't feel like a real currency.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how you feel. It matters of what, like, where your worth is coming from.
Yeah.
And if your worth is coming from God, then it's limitless. It's just like, it's such a beautiful thing. And I think that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. It's like, hey, like, there's more to it than me than just, like, what I see. You know what I mean? It's sometimes what other people might see. And that's another thing that I do want to talk about, because we are jumping into authenticity. And for me, I think growing up, my authenticity was challenged by drugs, it was challenged by alcohol, and I think it was also challenged by not having the right crowd around me. And then I think when you take a look at those three things, one thing that can affect all of that is also the enemy, which we know can come in various forms. You can sometimes self-sabotage your own self, I feel like, whenever like you don't have a firm grasp on who you are. I want to give a big shout out to one of my friends, and his name's Philip Box, for coming into my life. I remember during a time where I was kind of at a crossroads in my life. I met Philip Box. It's a funny story how we met. So we both were living in Tyler at the time, but we both met in New York.
Oh, wow.
So we love telling that story to everybody, and the reason why is because, like, we were both going to the same church, and we both signed up for this mission trip to go to New York, upstate New York, specifically Schenectady, and do mission work out there to help a church, like, kind of like build and expand. And so they were having a big, huge block party, and so our job was to kind of like go around the neighborhood, talk to people, invite people over to the block party at this church, and then we would also talk to them about God. The interesting thing about it was, I think it was like the week after Michael Jackson had passed away. So it was like, I mean, we got a couple days to spend in the city after we left upstate New York. So we went to the city, and I mean, the whole city was screaming Michael Jackson. The music was blaring out of everywhere. People with boom boxes, just with like Michael Jackson playing, like Beat It, you know what I mean? Human Nature, Thriller, like all of his hits, right? And I'm a big Michael Jackson fan. So for me, it was like peak like amazingness at that moment. And so like, I remember sometimes we'd go up to people and be like, you know, do you think Michael Jackson went to heaven? And then be like, you think yes, no? You think he did? Well, why do you think that? And you know, so you start questioning people, like you start asking people, like, you know, those were little soft opening questions and stuff like that. And so it was such an interesting way, I think, to like get out of my comfort zone, which I think at that moment I needed. I was a person, believe it or not, I was a person who was very shy when I was young. I did not want to talk. You would look at me, you would say, Arthur, can I borrow a pencil? I'd be like, and I wouldn't even say anything. Like, that's just who I was. I just was like, I did not like to talk. And I think whenever I met Phil was like, I call him Phil, just for short, but like when I met Phil, he was a very confident guy. Like he'd walk into like stores and he'd like would joke with like the clerk at the store. He would joke with like people that was waiting in line. He'd be like, he'd say anything and everything that came to his mind. But I mean, it was just so like funny, but it was also so confident. And then it made me think like, oh, people are much more willing to have a conversation than I think they don't. Because like I think like people are like, you know, hey, leave me alone. Like, hey, like I'm kind of like don't want to be bothered. And you do run into people like that all the time, right? I think like from time to time it's just normal. But seeing him kind of interact, he'd like walk everywhere, talk to anyone, whoever it was, and I was like, this guy's like a living, breathing picture of like who Jesus is. Like that's who Jesus was. Like Jesus talked to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that really, I think meeting Phil, walking with Phil, really kind of changed the course of my life, I think, for the better, because obviously I was able to come out of my bubble, but also find out about myself that I am this person who likes to talk to people, and I never knew it. You know what I mean? It's like when you like to do something and you do it, there's no faking it afterwards. You either like it or you don't. But it's all about sometimes about trying it and you just don't know it. You know what I mean? And I think for me, like, it was all about removing myself out of Tyler, Texas, and taking this mission trip to New York, and then like finding out something new about myself that I didn't know before. It was like an interesting.
Do you think you were always a talker and something in your childhood tamped it down, or do you think it was just something you never explored?
I think it was something I never explored. I think it was because
I remember you talking about how you used to like to be around people.
Yes.
Yeah, when you were a kid. Like that was your love of community and being around people.
Yeah. I think it changed though when I got to high school. Because like high school, it was like a different crowd I was running with. You know what I mean? The things that we were talking about, like, first of all, like, we would goof on people. Like, the people I hung out with, we would goof on people in class. We'd goof on the teacher. And it was, like, little smart one-liners. And so it was, like, for me, I was like, oh, I have this group of people that I could, like, do this with. And I don't have to, like, do more than the minimum. Because that's what it was. Like, so being cool in high school was, like, you didn't try. You know what I mean? You were a joke. And, you know, and I was a big joke in high school. I mean... Plus, like, I think I talked a little bit about my high school last time, but it was like going to jail. So it was always like, oh, I could probably talk more, but I'm not going to talk, I guess. And I was just like, I guess, like, the crowd really influenced me a lot. Hanging out with them, like, it was like, I remember, like, I don't know if I talked about this last time, but, like, going to school, it was, like, rough. And this was, I guess, early 2000s, like, in high school. And it was like, you know, gang culture was pretty big. And so, like, you'd go into, like, the restroom and there'd be, like, a live boxing match going on, right? Yeah. Right then and there. It's like, you know, I think I remember I fought, like, twice. And it was, like, nothing about, like, you had to, like, you were mad at anybody. It was, like, somebody would say, that person said that he can beat you up. Yeah. Now, is that true? And you're just like, heck nah. And then that other person would hear you and be like, what did you say? And it was, all right, so we're about to settle this, right? So you'd spend like 30 seconds chest and ribs. Chest and ribs meaning like we're going to hit each other and we're going to go blow for blow, chest or ribs, no face. Yeah. Hopefully. Because a punch could slip, right? And that's just is what it is. And that would happen frequently all the time. There would be fights before lunch, fights after lunch. It was just a very like... That's toxic. Now looking back at it, like, that's toxic. I don't know if that still happens today. I don't know. Does. It does? Okay. It does? Okay. Yeah, like...
The kids at my daughter's high school actually, like, go to the park down the street.
The park down the street? Wow.
And they have fight night.
Fight night? Yeah. Wow, that sounds like... that sounds crazy.
Yeah, like who was it? Is it Tom Cruise? Brad Pitt, the fight night.
Fight Club.
Fight Club. Yeah, but they have fight night at the park, and it's just a bunch of boys, and they just, whoever wants to fight, like, you just get in the ring, but it's really just the park.
Yeah. And I mean, from what I know, it was also similar at other high schools too, because I have some friends that went to other high schools, and they were like, if anything, it was probably worse over there. What they would tell me is like, because they would host also like, last day they would have like a huge fight, and it'd be all Mexican people on this side versus all black people on another side, and it was basically like, think of it as like a Royal Rumble about to happen, and it would happen every year. It would be like tradition at this school, and it would really go down. But it's wild. At our school, like, we had fights, but it was mainly like, I feel like it was mainly like us Hispanic guys who really just wanted to fight, and it was just something to do. We were bored, but like, we really like were fighting, and sometimes it wasn't serious, but like sometimes it was, and then it just depends. But like, we'd have fights out in the soccer locker room too, like it went down over there, or sometimes at the lake. If we were skipping, we would skip for Cinco de Mayo, we would go to the lake.
That's the most Mexican thing
That's
ever.
It really was. And actually, that was the first time I ever drank Jose Cuervo, which, man, I remember I drank it. It was like so strong.
Oh yeah.
It was so nasty.
Yeah.
It was like, I did not like it.
I've never liked Jose.
Yeah.
Jose is the reason I don't like tequila. I like tequila now because I've learned, or when I was drinking, I learned what good tequila was.
Yeah.
And the one thing I do kind of miss
1800?
is mezcal.
Mezcal, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the worm?
No, it's like the smoky tequila.
Oh, yeah.
So it's smoked.
I was watching, what was I watching? I was watching a Gordon Ramsay show on, I guess I don't remember where it was, but like he ends up visiting like a mezcal farm, and like where they produce a lot of the nation's like tequila, and it's like it's legit, like they grow like this plant and they have to cut it, and that's where they get the mezcal from and stuff. So
yeah, it's a very specific plant.
Very specific plant. But back to what I was saying, like authenticity has a lot to do with who you have around you. So I think who I had around me in high school really kind of like brought that ceiling down, I guess, for me.
That's what I was gonna say. So I always tell people to like dig back to what used to bring them true childlike joy, because that's who you truly are. Because when you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, those things that you truly enjoy, like for me it was playing kitchen. I used to like to pretend cook, and I used to like to teach, and I used to like to draw and do arts and crafts and stuff. And like, when I really dig down to like who I am, I'm a very communicative person, a very creative person, and my biggest and best stress reliever is cooking. Like, just get in the kitchen and just start throwing some stuff together, and then enjoy a good meal when I'm done. But when we get into high school, like you were saying, like, we tend to tamp down those parts of ourselves because they're not cool.
Yeah.
We might get bullied for being the nerd that wants to be in drama club or whatever. So we tamp down those parts of ourselves.
You're right. I think one thing I told you last time too was like, our school was like racially divided by choice. So like, I also didn't frequent with a lot of people who were different than me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then after high school's over, it's like, well, that's what the real world's all about. The real world's all about meeting people who are different than you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think whenever I went to New York and on that mission trip, I was meeting people like, think New York pretty ethnically diverse. I think it also opened up that gateway that was once closed, that was basically like, hey, like, have a conversation with somebody who's different. And now I do. You know what's funny? It's like, I wish that I could get everybody that I'm cool with, that I've met, in a room together. Because like, you'd be able to see like just how like super different everybody looks and what everybody's into. Because like, I think I make it a point to want to talk to somebody who's very different from me, not only like physical wise, appearance wise, but also like what they're into, like, you know what I mean? Like, people who are into like, I don't know, like, I want to name stuff, but it's like, I don't think it's weird because like, I'm into stuff like that, like, like vinyl collecting, you know what I mean, or vintage clothing, or you know what I mean, or it's like they're really into collecting coins, or they're into current, it's like people are like into so many different things now, and like, they express their ways, or they express themselves so differently too, that it makes you think like, oh, like, I should really re-examine who I am, because there's going to be so many different people out there, and if I don't re-examine who I am, you're going to make it harder for yourself to interact with people in the world. I think one of the things that I really love doing is I love building bridges, like metaphorical bridges, I'm saying, in the sense with people, because it's like you never know who that person is going to be later in your life. You know what I mean? It's like I've come across people who, you know, that I've never talked to, that I could have talked to like in my past, and like I look at them now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like CEO of a company, like, and I never talked to them. And it's not always that it's going to be like something like a physical gain or a gain for you, but it's like sometimes it's like somebody that you could also impact too as well. And like one thing that I enjoy is like talking to people, learning like who it is that they are. I think like I was telling this to a friend in the Connect group recently, and I was telling her like I loved when I moved to Denton because like it changed me like forever. Like, you know, it was such a culture shock, and I needed to go through that. I needed to understand like, hey, like not everybody comes from a cookie cutter place like Tyler, like very conservative. And it's like when I was there, I was like, wow, like these are people who share different beliefs. These are people who share like a different way of the way they look at the world. But you know what? Like sometimes it's not always about, you know, picking out differences. Sometimes it's just having a conversation with that person and understanding that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And oftentimes now, whenever I talk to people to this day, usually one of the last things I say is, oh, and by the way, like I go to church and I'm a Christian. And they're like, what? And they're like, I would have never thought you go to a church. I would have never thought you were a Christian. I'm like, why do you think that? And they're like, well, because like you don't come off as judgy or too goody shoes, and you don't come off like, you know, very stiff and very like, you know, not breathing. I'm perfect, blah blah blah. And so it's like, and I'm like, you know what? That makes me sad to hear this. Yeah. And I'm sad that you actually have that bias looked on Christians, because, you know, I think for many years, I think it's been like that, where it's like we've had, you know, followers of Christ really kind of tamper the image or tamper it for some of us, you know what I mean? And it sucks because it's like, you know, it's, as humans, from the other side of the coin, I don't think we should be so quick to cancel people out. For instance, like when you go to a Mexican restaurant and you've had bad Mexican food, do you cancel out Mexican food for the rest of your life?
Stop eating Mexican food. No, you go to a different Mexican restaurant.
You go to a different restaurant.
Yeah, my husband experienced this. So he grew up Catholic. Like he was introduced to the Catholic Church around 10, 11 years old, right?
Yeah.
And he had very bad experience with church. And while he doesn't know the language around it, he has church hurt.
Yeah.
And now he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't know if he's atheist, agnostic, whatever. He just doesn't think that there is a God. But he's not completely closed off to it. He's like,
that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like he's like, if ever there were evidence or proof or I had a reason to believe in God, I might consider it.
Yeah.
But right now I don't believe there's a God. And I'm a Christian, and people always ask, like, how does y'all's relationship work? Like, most marriages fall apart because of
I have lots of questions. We're going to have to talk after this podcast, actually, now that I think about it. Yes.
Yeah. But it works because and he always tells me, like, if more Christians were like you, there would be more Christians.
Exactly. And you know what? And that's great, because whenever you are the way you should be, how a Christian should be, you're able to shine your light in more places than you would imagine. Yeah. And I think that's, as a person who, you know, is a Christ follower, I think we're meant to shine the light, you know, not just in church, not just in a Connect group, not just in, you know, where we think it's safe to talk about God. Like, no, like, shine that light, you know what I mean, at the bar, or if you're at the club, or if you're at speakeasy, or if you're at a pop-up event, or, you know what I mean? Like, be that same person who you are in church. Don't be afraid to be that person, you know, Monday through Saturday. I want to give a big shout out to Joe.
Our friend Joe?
Our friend Joe, okay. Yes, because he's a great person at being who he is on Sunday.
He's so authentic.
Monday through Saturday. He is what he is. And yeah, like,
he's just...
He doesn't like morph himself on Sunday, and he's like suddenly this different person, and you're just seeing this person, you're just like, who is this person in front of me? No, who you see is who you get. This is Joe, and he's
same
so
bubbly,
nice. Yeah,
funny,
nice,
loving,
bubbly,
open.
loving.
Yeah,
like,
he's like that all the time.
all the time. And so like I admire that because like that's how it should be. Yeah. Not when you go home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now it's like I'm a different person. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And
Joe's story is on the podcast. His is called Growing Up Latino, or Growing Up Latino and Being Sober Latino, something like that. It's earlier this season, but you can listen to Joe's story. He's amazing.
He's a really great guy. Yeah, I have the privilege of calling him a good friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, like be who you are on Sunday, who you are throughout the rest of the week. I think that's key to being authentic, because you shouldn't be twisting knobs or dialing anything up or down. Like, feel free to be yourself. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's just feel free. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a jokey person, show that jokey side. Or if you're that person who like loves to talk about, you know, I don't know, sports or feel free. You know what it is? When I was in Europe, I got this impression of Europeans that they are such a humble type of people. Mm-hmm. They're super laid back, chill. Even the people that I would run into who were super wealthy, I didn't feel like it was like in my face. I feel like as Americans, we're very flashy people. Yeah. I'm guilty of this too. Mm-hmm. Like, we're very flashy. Dallas is very guilty of this. Like, it's a very flashy city. It's like competition. It's like who got this, who got that.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses. It's very indirectly that way, but also directly that way. Yeah. Europe is like, no. It's like we're chill, we're laid back. It's like people value different things there. You know what I mean? And I noticed that when I was walking through the streets, it was like just a different vibe. I just felt more relaxed. Not that I'm not relaxed here, but it was just so like relaxing. You know what I mean? To be in an environment like that, where it was like, first of all, I guess it helped that nobody knows you, and like you don't know the language, but also like people were just so nice and welcoming. In fact, even like if you didn't know the language over there, people were just happy that you were trying to speak the language. I don't like. Yeah. You know this. Like in Texas, it's not really like that. I don't think it's like that. Like if you don't know English in Texas, it's hard for you.
And if you don't know Spanish, proper Spanish. Yeah. And you're brown.
Yeah.
It's hard for you too.
It is.
That's why I changed my dog's name.
But Banana's not Banana?
No, her name is Chiquita.
Chiquita?
Yeah, it's Chiquita.
That's but based off of bananas?
Yeah, well, that's why I came up with banana.
Nice.
Her name was Chiquita. But I say Chiquita, and I'm brown. Yeah. So people would ask me, like at Clyde Warren and whatever, like, oh, what's your dog's name? And it would be other brown people.
Nathaniel.
And I would say Chiquita.
Charles.
And they're like, you mean Chiquita? And I'm like, yeah, Chiquita.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways in Texas. We're very hypercritical in Texas about our languages.
This could be a podcast in itself. You're right. I mean, I've been with like other people like that too, who kind of want to like kind of put you down a little bit for when you attempting to speak the language. Like, let's do better. Like, let's not make it such a like an elitist feeling. Like whenever like you're better at speaking something. Like, no, like give like I said, in Europe, people were so they were so nice. They were so like in awe, like to see you try like to speak the language. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it goes back to the fact that they are comfortable with who they are.
Authenticity.
Yes, that's where I was going with it. Like, they're comfortable with who they are. They're comfortable with who they are as a country.
They are.
They're comfortable with having people come into their space, and because they have such history and such deep roots that they can't be shaken.
I didn't want to come back. To be honest, when I was over there, when I was in Rome, like, I was there and I was like, I'm digging this. Yeah. Like,
just stay.
I just want to stay.
Yeah.
Like, this is like nice. Because it's like, you know, you're coming back home and you know, like, you know, there's sometimes like there's in America, everything is like busy. Hustle. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. Check off all the boxes. I didn't see. I mean, I don't get that vibe in Europe. I mean,
It's
at least
very
the
laid
places
back.
that very laid back. Very. I told you about the siestas in Spain. Like people are really laid back over there.
Yeah.
But it's like like people are like on a different like type of time over there. Like they're just more like I said, they value different things.
They
like
do.
when
They value rest and family time. They have 1 month holidays for everybody. So holidays, vacation in Europe, like that's what they call vacation. But everybody has a 1 month holiday every year.
That's amazing. Another thing that I want to talk about is that they value. They're not big on AC.
No.
They're not like they're not big on AC. I
No.
remember we checked in the Airbnb in Rome, and like it was hot, so we turned on the AC. We turned it down to like 70, right? Because it was so hot in Rome, and like our host was coming by just to check up on us because we had just barely checked in, and she walks in and she's like, "Allora," she's like, "It's cold. It's cold in here."
Yeah,
And
they
I was
don't
like,
really use the AC.
yeah, it was like she was like it's freezing, and I was like, oh, it feels good here for us.
They just open the windows.
Yeah. They just open the windows
Open
and
the doors, open the windows.
they're
let it
naturally
breeze in.
acclimated to that. They're not so like it goes back to your authenticity. What do you value? What do you not? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you would go to like places like I experienced this in Rome and Paris. Like they don't even give you ice cubes for your water. Like that's like an American thing.
Yep.
So that was interesting.
We are spoiled. We want our water the exact temperature that we want it. We want our houses the exact temperature that we want it. We want everything just as such.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like checking off the boxes.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like when you brought up authenticity, like I spent the first 17, 18, 19, 20, 3 years that I lived in Dallas trying to fit into the box.
Yes, that does happen. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You like indirectly start like kind of like maybe changing what it is you do, what you like to do.
In Lubbock, we have a term for it because Lubbock people tend to move to Dallas.
Yeah.
Or Dallas people go to Lubbock to go to Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And then they go back to Dallas. So we call it Dallasitis. And people that move to Dallas get Dallasitis when they stop coming back home to Lubbock because they're too busy working to accumulate the things, to fit in with their neighbors, to check all the boxes.
Yeah.
And you start to see less and less of them back home.
Oh.
And so
forget your roots.
Yeah, you lose them because you're so focused on getting the next thing and accomplishing the next task and getting the next promotion. And
that's the Dallas mindset. That's about and it's like I gotta play pickleball.
Yeah, pickleball. I love pickleball. It's guilty as charged.
I've never played.
Official Dallas site.
I feel proud that I've never played pickleball.
You haven't?
No, and I plan not to. I just want to make it so far into life that I never touch that sport. I play tennis.
Fun. It's
like tennis,
I play tennis too. I play tennis, and tennis is the one sport that I can actually kind of semi-play because I'm the most unathletic, uncoordinated person on the planet.
Oh, okay.
I can semi-play tennis. I'm not great, but I can at least play.
That's awesome, yeah.
I can volley a little bit.
Yeah.
But pickleball is cool because you're not doing as much running as in
tennis. Because it's legit like
little bitty.
It's
tennis.
It's like it's like ping pong mixed with tennis, is it not? Yeah. So
it's fun and it's a great like couples, like 2 against 2.
I refuse.
Sport. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try that one day to do it.
I'm just kidding.
It's fun. I love it.
Yeah, no, maybe I'll be the next pickleball league champion or something. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Chicken and pickle is fun.
Chicken and pickle. What's that?
It's there's 3 in the Metroplex now. But it's like they have.
Of course there is.
Yeah, of course. It's pickleball, but their place has like cornhole, pickleball, the giant. So it's like a huge outdoor area with the pickleball courts and a restaurant. And they have like fried chicken sandwiches. So their chicken is really good because it's marinated in pickle juice. Yeah, chicken and pickle.
Yeah. You just made me think of something. When people ask me, when I meet people abroad, and they say, where am I from? And I say Dallas. And they're like, what is there to do over there? I always blank on what to tell them. Well,
pickleball!
Pickleball. There's brunch. Yeah. There's lunch. There's maybe go to a lake. There's maybe, and that's usually what I'll say.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do if you drink. That's usually what I tell people.
Yeah, and then I tell people it's like your average metropolitan city. Like they have bars, they have clubs if you're into that. There's parks if you're into that. But I feel like Dallas doesn't have an identity. Like, you know what I mean?
It's just the city. It's
Dallas.
Yeah.
Like some cities have a vibe and some cities have a identity. Like one that comes to mind right off the bat, like Oakland. Like Oakland is very, like they're proud of being different. They're proud of being like, that you'll find somebody walking a cat, on a leash. You'll find somebody walking down the street with like a snake wrapped around their neck. You'll just see somebody on a unicycle, like going down the road.
This sounds like Venice Beach. You're describing Venice Beach.
Venice Beach. So you'll see like middle schoolers riding down with 4-wheelers down the street, like doing wheelies.
Are you talking about Oakland, California?
Oakland, California. Yeah. So like that's what I'm saying. Like some cities just have like their own version, their own personality, and I love cities like that. I love going to cities where it's like so like they're so like different, but they have their own identity, and it's just like I feel like I'm not just going to another place that has like like a Panda Express, and they have like a Sparrow's Pizza. You know what I mean? It's like it's different.
It's not your average food court.
I mean, I'm not trying to like talk down on any city. If your city's like that, like. Hey, we need cities like that. We need consistency in the world sometimes too. But for those cities that we can go out and like see some cool things, like I love y'all. I love going to those kind of cities. And Europe has a lot of those kind of cities, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like I want to go back. But that goes back to the main point, authenticity. And I think your authenticity is going to be based on like who you are as a person. And I think for me, like a lot of times it was lost because of those 3 challenges I named. Like it was my environment often dictating what my authenticity should be. Especially like you're brand new to church, right? I should act like this. Blah, 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 blah. Or I'm in a college class and I should not answer my hand to every question the teacher says because I know every answer, because if I do then I'll be weird and then blah blah blah. Or you know what I mean? That, or it's people around you, that kind of dictate like your story and your role, and like who like there'll be people like trying to tell you who you are, like, and they know you better than who you think you are, and then like sometimes and you listen to them, especially if you think like they hold like a special place in your life. You just think like, okay, like maybe they do have a point, like maybe like you know what I'm saying, this is a thing. But like I would just say one of the things I think that really helps me is also bouncing it off of people who I've known my whole life, and I'm grateful to have a few friends in my life that I've known 20 plus years. You know what I mean? And it's like I bounce things off of them all the time. I'm like, hey, like this, and they'll be like, nah, that's not you.
Yeah.
Like, that's not you. Like, hey, I have this plan to like want to do this, do that, but they're like, but what if it's gonna like take away time from this? You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like sometimes like I'll have an idea and I'll have a project, and you know what I mean, and I get challenged on it because it's like, well, how does that glorify God, or how is that going to bring glory to His kingdom? You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes the projects even that we get involved with can kind of take away time from God, and I've had to say no to a lot of like opportunities like that in my life. Whenever it's come to like job opportunities that I knew that was going to pay me more, but they were going to have me like maybe like out lots of Sundays and stuff like that. Like I always turned them down because I knew like that's not authentic to who it is that I am. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like that's what I think is great about just my life in general, is because it's like with authenticity comes like a lot of no's that you have to give out in life. Yeah. With the same yeses that you give in life, you got to give out a lot of no's, and your no's got to be firm so that when you give a no, people respect it. Yeah. People understand it, and people don't like challenge you on your no. Yeah. Like no just means ask later, right? And you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, you know what I mean? So it's like it can often get twisted in that sense of way, like in that sense of fashion, I feel like.
But when you don't know who you are, it's easy to say no, and that like it's almost like people know that you are unsure, so they know, okay, well, maybe if I ask in an hour it'll be a yes, and then they wear you down enough that you're like, okay, I'll do it, and that chips away at your authenticity. And then like for me, I slowly chipped away at my authenticity, and before I knew it, I was in a totally different career field than I intended to be 12 years down the road.
Yeah.
And I was miserable and drinking 2 bottles of wine a night. And,
Was this when you were in corporate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Corporate will do that to you.
Yeah.
There's some corporate places like that are kind of toxic. Not kind of, they are. And it's just like, when I worked in the financial services industry, like for a few years, financial services industry, corporate is like very cutthroat.
Yeah.
It's very toxic. It's like, that rug will get swept right under you. They might throw you in front of that bus.
Yeah, and if it's not who you are, if it's not true to you, it's even more toxic.
Yeah.
Because you're pouring of yourself into this company, and you're giving of your time and your energy.
Right.
And in some of those jobs, it's 50, 60 hours a week that you're giving of yourself. And if it's not true to who you are, it leaves you feeling depleted. It leaves you feeling exhausted. It leaves you feeling hopeless that there isn't hope or a better future tomorrow.
You know what I love about your story right now, what you just said though? You did not hinder yourself from taking that opportunity.
Yeah.
You at least took it. And I think there's a big difference between saying, oh, I don't want to do this opportunity because it's not authentic to me, or I don't want to do this opportunity because I don't want to do this opportunity. You know what I mean? Or try this thing or try this venture out. You know what I mean? So I think you should always keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And then if you start to see like little like speckles of things that don't align with your authenticity,
Exactly. Yeah.
pull out. Like, this is the time for you to stand up, say something, like speak up.
Yeah.
You're not imprisoned by what you're going through. You can always get out of it.
You're not a tree. You can move.
I love that. But also, sometimes it's not a corporation that's making you feel ill about yourself. It could also be, I think, people that you have around. They could even be Christ followers. Like one of my favorite stories in the Bible is whenever Mary used that expensive perfume to pour onto Jesus' feet. And we all know what happened. If y'all don't know, let me tell y'all. So basically Mary,
she was a prostitute, right? Or was she the one that had the demons that he exorcised or that set her free?
No.
I never remember.
No. This was whenever Mary and Martha were at the house,
Yes.
and then Jesus came over because he was visiting Lazarus.
Yeah.
So Jesus comes over, and they come and they serve Jesus. They're preparing the table for him, and one of the things that they do is they start to pour that expensive perfume onto Jesus' feet. Judas sees this, and he has a smart comment to say. He says, hey, why are you pouring that all over his feet? You're wasting it. That money could have been used. That perfume could have been sold for the money to be used and then to given to the poor, right? And I think it just goes back to what I want to tell this to everybody is if you're involved in what is doing something for God, if you're involved in a project, something you're passionate about, and God has placed it in your heart for you to do and give to God and show glory to him, by all means do it. But there also is going to be haters around the world, or haters in your circle, who are going to have something to say about that. And I feel like there's always going to be a Judas maybe in that corner. And I feel like for those people that I want to say is I just want to tell people that don't lose hope, don't lose faith, continue moving forward with what it is that God put in your heart to do, because God put that in your heart to do that for him. He didn't put that in your heart for acceptance for anybody else around. It goes back to being authentic to who it is that you are, or what God placed in your heart. And I think authenticity is something God has blessed us with, each and every one of us. We all have our authentic traits that make us who we are. Teresa is who she is based on these authentic traits. I am who I am based on these authentic traits. And there's always going to be people in the corner with a smart comment that may sound like it's based on biblical truth, right? Because doesn't it sound a little convincing? Oh, gee,
we should have given that money to the poor.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of the context in the text. I don't know if that thought went into Mary's head. Did she feel doubt at that moment until Jesus spoke up? Did she feel bad? Did she feel like she was doing something wrong? So even that's what I'm saying. The people who you have around you, can sometimes maybe sway you from doing what it is that you need to do, or what you've been like told to do by God.
Yeah.
That's my beef with that. And also, like, for instance, like thinking about this from like a more macro level, like in this game called life, because I sometimes call it a game, you're not always going to have people cheering you on doing it, right? You know what I mean? Like whenever you go to a football game, whenever you go to a basketball game, you know what I mean? You have people that are sitting in home side, you have people sitting on the away side. People on the away side are not cheering for you to do good, for your success. They're just not. They're not going to. No. And guess what? If you hear them booing at you, if you hear them like just talking trash about you, do you stop? Do you stop in this game, and you stop in the game and just say, well, you know what? I'm just not gonna pick up this basketball anymore, this football anymore, because I just heard them boo at me, and that's it. And I'm going home, and I'm just gonna stop everything I'm doing. No, you don't do that. No. They continue playing the game, and that's how it is. That's how it should be. Like in our lives, like continue progressing forward. I think because you're always gonna have that chatter coming through, reverberating in your ears, and I think you just have to remain just faithful in what God's word is telling you. And I think that's another great little picture that I had when I was abroad and I was traveling, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, I've had so many interesting experiences happen to me. That's why I want to write this book, because I feel like I don't care to sell and make money off of it. I don't care. If anything, who knows, like maybe I'll end up giving away more copies and selling it. Who cares, right? Yeah. But like I'm doing it because it's like, I think like I have an interesting story to tell, and also like telling it through a faith lens, I think is also like super impactful. But also like I'm gonna try not to rush through it, because I think like I've had a lot of my great experiences and a lot of my great thoughts come to me whenever I've traveled. So it's all the more reason to travel too as well, because like, you know, I get to write on my book, and I get to like, you know, while I travel.
Are you handwriting in like a journal, or are you typing?
Yes, with a quill and ink. I am dotting every I and crossing every T. No, I'm just kidding. I wish. No, I'm solely digital. I'm doing it like on a Google Doc, and it's so convenient because like what I'm doing is like I can basically like pull it up on my phone.
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere.
That's how I have my book, like that I've been working on. Yeah, I have it on my one.
Please share. Are you able to share this exclusive news?
Well, I've been slowly writing it over a while now, but like I've always, when I tell my story, people are like, you need to write a book, because I have a crazy story, right? Yeah.
A very cool story, an impactful story.
Yeah, and so the title is, because my coaching business is Bella Grace, which is beautiful grace, right?
Love it, yes.
And so the name of my book is But God.
I remember that.
Yeah, seeing the beautiful grace in the darkest of places.
I love that.
Because I've been through a lot of things, and I was introduced to Jesus. Like, I was raised Catholic, so I always knew God existed, but I didn't realize that you could have a personal relationship with God through Jesus, like because of Jesus and what he did, until I was introduced to this concept in high school by my high school boyfriend, who was very abusive. Like, it was a really bad relationship. I struggled a lot to reconcile who God said I was and who I was learning that God said I was. Yeah. And having been shown this by a guy who was abusing me in every sense of the word on a daily basis. And I would like try to make him stop and say, like, this isn't what God wants, this isn't the way that it's supposed to be. And he would...
What would he do? Would he twist the word, or what was he doing?
It was like
manipulation, I guess.
Yeah. God wants you to submit. God wants... Like, he was trying to make our relationship a marriage. We were in high school. We were not married.
Right.
And so it was very manipulative. And so for a lot of years after I got out of that relationship, I turned to drugs and alcohol because I got pregnant at 15. My mom and my brothers made me have an abortion, and I had a lot of guilt and shame because I had just very recently been introduced to God, and I was like, this isn't what God wants for me. And most of the sex that we had in our relationship was forced. Like, it was never that I wanted it. It was that's what he wanted. And it was easier to just give in. And so when I got pregnant, it was like, oh, this is a little bit of light in this really dark place in my life. Yeah. And I actually tried to kill myself the September before I got pregnant. So I tried to kill myself in September. I got pregnant in December, January, had my abortion in February. And our relationship just got way worse after that. And when we broke up, he actually almost killed me. Yeah. I couldn't eat, couldn't drink, had bruises on my neck. Like, it was really bad. Yeah. And so trying to reconcile that much hurt as a 16-year-old, I think I was 16 when we broke up.
It's a lot to bear.
It was a lot. And at that point is when I was introduced to drugs and alcohol. And it was like, the only way that I could deal with the fact that this God that was supposed to love me and care for me had allowed all this stuff to happen to me. But through the rest of my story of like being on drugs, all the things that came with that, I wrecked my car at one point, should have died, broke my hip. Like, I was in a wheelchair almost my entire senior year. Like, through all of this, I can see now, looking back, I can see God's hand on me every step of the way. Yes. And so that's why the title of my book is But God.
But God. I love that.
Yeah.
You have such an incredible story, and it's not by coincidence that you went through every single thing that you went through, and right at any point it could have went left. Like, we could have lost you, right? But then you think about, like, God's hand is in your life because every turn God was there. Like, God saved you. God, you might have got a little burned here and there, but like, you're here today to tell your story, and it's a good story. It's a great story because it exemplifies Him. It magnifies God's name, and it's like, I'm excited for the story, and I'm excited for this book whenever you do drop it.
Yeah.
Keep us posted on that release date.
Yes.
Please do.
It's a lot. I know. I keep trying to figure out which parts to have, but through all of that, I lost little bits of who I was.
That part. Yeah.
Yes. And so it was, now looking back, I thought I was losing bits and pieces of who I was, but the truth was that God was refining who I truly was, because I wouldn't be a sober coach. I wouldn't be on my way to being an addiction counselor. I wouldn't be a sober podcast host had I not been in those situations. Had I not seen the brokenness that can happen from those high school experiences to cause someone like me who grew up in a very perfect Catholic family, like with loving parents, like how that person can become a drug addict. And like, so he was refining all those tiny pieces of me to create this person that I am today. Yeah. And it took me going through all of that to truly know who I am, to truly know what I'm passionate about, to truly know what sets my heart on fire. And like you were saying, to be able to say no to the things that don't align with who I actually am. Yeah.
And I mean, because like our walk with God and our life with God isn't going to be linear. It's never, a straight line. It's always going to be this little tangled web, little tangled line, but it's going up, but it's just going in every which direction before it goes up. Yeah. And I love that verse, and I don't remember where it's at, but it's like, many are the plans and purposes in a person's heart, but God's plan for that person prevails.
That was the verse of the day yesterday on the Bible app.
It was, wasn't it? I remember, that's probably why it was so fresh in my mind. Yeah. Because I think I remember reading it.
Man makes his plans, but God directs his path. Or something like that.
Yes. I try to read it as soon as I wake up. I'm in this group text with some friends, and they share the verses. So like we'll all chime in and we'll all talk something about it. But yeah, no, that's a really good verse. And for you, it was that you had to go through all of that. You had to go through everything to be where you're at today. Yeah. And that's one thing that I love about my life, and I'm sure you would agree, that you wouldn't trade all those experiences for nothing, because you'd lose all that wisdom. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. People always ask me, like, would you change it? And I'm like, no. Mm-mm. They're like, you wouldn't change any of it? And I'm like, no.
No. Because it would change you as a person too. And I mean, you wouldn't have anything to draw back from if you were to change all that. I mean, that's many times what we think about when we think about the Christian life. It's like, I want no stresses, and I want no worries, and I want no problems in life, and that's how the Christian life should be, and absolutely not.
Look, I became a Christian, and then immediately was faced.
Said events happened, yeah.
Yeah. Immediately. Like, it was just...
And it's one story that I think about a lot, too. It's like, because you were mentioning this earlier when you were talking about your husband and his doubt. Mm-hmm. And I think, doubt is a good thing. And I think it just depends where doubt leads you, where it can be not a good thing and maybe not a bad thing. One of the things that I like about the story in the Bible is whenever John is in jail, and he's been jailed because he spoke out against King Herod for, marrying his brother's wife, essentially. Yeah. And he gets thrown in jail, and he's in jail, and all of a sudden John's in jail, and he's basically starts questioning, like, is Jesus who he says he is? You know, and he has somebody go out and ask Jesus this, basically. And then Jesus doesn't answer the question directly, but instead he says, tell John that, the heel walk, the lame can walk, the heel are healed, the blind people see, essentially saying, John, this is who I am. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Jesus, I think, is the great picture of authenticity. I don't recall a moment wherever Jesus basically questioned his authenticity or traded his authenticity. He was someone who was very, very firm in who he was. Yeah. And that's very admirable. And something that we can all learn from, I think. Especially when it's, think about John. John baptized Jesus. I mean, John was very close to Jesus, yet even he had doubts. So I think that's just great for us to know. Like, we can go through doubt and just know that, hey, like, it's probably part of a process. It's probably part of a season, but it doesn't mean that that's where we're always going to be. Yeah. I think it's like, and it's, sometimes it comes out, right? Whenever we're going through like a season that's tough, and it comes out, and it's just, you just start to get a little wobbly, your knees start to buckle a little bit, and it's tough. I don't think anybody would say, I really love it whenever life's tough. I really love it when I just, start to like see troubles and trials in my life. It's like, no, it's like we all love like living a comfortable life. Yeah. But the reality is that it doesn't. And I think without those hard trials, though, I feel like our authenticity, like you said, is not refined. Yes. Right? So that's kind of like, when you think about everything, like, I don't know the first thing about like welding and all that stuff, but doesn't metal bend whenever like you apply heat to it, basically? So like that metal has to go through a very, very rigorous process in order for it to change. Right. And I think a lot of times, like us being metal, us being whatever's like that also has to happen to us. We also go through rigorous processes in order to change, in order to be able to like grow from things. Isn't like, I don't know the first thing about diamonds. I think they're beautiful.
It's the same thing. Right? It's cold. It gets crushed.
Right?
And crushed, and then a diamond is there.
And then isn't it like whenever like a seed that gets planted into the ground and then something grows from it, a seed has to break in order for it to grow? Yep. I mean, there's so many different...
My favorite is even glow sticks have to break before they shine.
Yes,
so I'm an old raver.
Yeah, spoken from a true raver right here. And hey, we loved our glow sticks. That's another thing about Europe too. This is kind of off topic a little bit, but like they really love their EDM out there. Yeah, I loved it.
That's where it was born.
That's where it was born, right? Yeah, because like I'd get in the car and like I'd be like, whoa, I'm gonna Shazam this song right now because I want to know what the name of the song is. So like my playlist is like humongous right now, packed with so much songs that I collected over my vacation, and I love playing them because now it just reminds me of those times I was like walking through Rome, gonna get like some pizza, or I was in Paris and I was gonna go buy myself some eclairs from the local bakery. I was listening to this song, so it just I love music. It transports you back.
It does. I told you my story with Britney Spears' Toxic.
Yes.
Transports you back.
I think that's how you should actually end today's podcast with that, because I do like the piano song. By the way, is that you playing piano?
No.
Oh, okay. I always wondered. No. I was like, maybe that's her piece.
No. I found it online somewhere and I liked it. So
there you go. Yeah. And today you're gonna close off with like Toxic by Britney Spears, and then we just hope we don't get that strike from publishers' right or anything like that. Basically. But no, this is, I mean, and just to wrap up, I'll just say this. It's like, because I did talk about the 3 things that can hinder, your authenticity. Your friends, or quote unquote friends, people around you, right? Your environment, and then the enemy. I think the enemy plays a big part in who you think you are. You saw it whenever the enemy approached Jesus, whenever he was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. He came to trick Jesus, try to tell him, hey, like, jump off this ledge, or jump, and then the angels will save you. Like, he thought he could like get to him, and like, again, Jesus was like pretty firm in who he said he was, and he didn't allow that to like deter him. He knew he was on earth for a mission, and he fulfilled it. And
he didn't have to prove himself.
And he didn't have to. Yeah, he didn't have to prove himself.
Because he was so solid in who he was.
He was so solid in who he was. Yeah. And I think that's just admirable for all of us to like admire, because it's like something that we can take home to us whenever we get faced by like the enemy. And then it's like, it's the enemy, and then sometimes it's us self-sabotaging ourselves, telling ourselves that we can't do this and we can't do that. And my prayer is for everybody who's listening is that I hope that you have one person that you can lean on, that you can talk to, that can make you feel, or at least point you in the direction of who your true self is. Whether it's not making you feel it, because at the end of the day you have to feel that for yourself, but maybe it's one person who can just kind of like shake you, like metaphorically, and get you out of that, because it's like it comes to all of us, right? It can attack all of us. And like I said, what helps you, what are positive things to finding your authenticity? I think it's being able to, first of all, remove yourself from an environment. Like traveling is really great. I enjoy reading. I think a lot of times like reading is like underrated, but shout out to Rogelio on the hospitality team, who recently gave me this cool book called it's Authenticity, but it's by this author called David Winston. And I haven't finished it yet, but it's so good. And I recommend it for anybody who's, who has like questions about where their authenticity is deriving from, but also what it's made up of. And what is false authenticity. I think a lot of times like we draw up a narrative of what we think authenticity is in our lives. And oftentimes it's not fully, it doesn't have legs. You know what I mean? It's like a sandcastle. And so that's actually another book I'm reading too. Shout out Rich Wilkerson Jr. I'm reading this book called Sandcastle Kings. It's so good. If y'all get a chance to check it out, check it out.
See, you're adding to my book list. Do you see this pile of books over here?
I love it.
That's
That is your pile? Okay, I'm seeing 6 books. You should see my pile. It's like stands tall with this table right here. It's probably like 5. Really? Yeah, it's probably like 3-4 feet tall.
Well, this is one of the piles.
Okay.
I have another one up there. I tried to find a book. I have piles everywhere.
Piles everywhere?
Yeah.
You know what? And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I'm guilty of like reading books and then like reading other books. So like I'm tangentially reading so many books.
That's why they're stacked. I just pick one out and I'm like, I'm gonna read 2 pages out of this one.
Exactly. Yeah. No, so like I think part of being authentic for me was understanding what it is that I like to do. And I think one of the things that I like to do is I like to give. I'm like such a generous person. And so like when I go to countries now, I go to like places, like I like to pick something out from the country, because like it makes it like pretty cool to actually go back and say, hey, like this is like something unique that I got from this said country, right? Because otherwise you come back and I don't know, growing up in a Hispanic household, you don't show up to people's houses empty-handed.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not part of the that's not part of like the culture. And so like me being Hispanic, but also me being like generous. It's like I'm the type of person who likes to like give and who likes to like do things. So I just wanted to give you just a little bit of like some cool little gifts that I picked up along the way. Like, first of all, this is I don't know if y'all can see this. This is Eiffel Tower. It says La Tour Eiffel, Paris, 1889, and essentially when the Eiffel Tower was built. So I wanted to give this to you. It's like a cool little like sketch pad, little like you can doodle in it, you can write in it.
I forever have these in my backpack.
Do you really?
Yes.
Awesome.
I use little books like this all the time. They're all over the place. So
Perfect. Yeah, of course. And I also wanted to give you this. You can give this to your daughter, to your husband. So essentially, this is the Colosseum. You can't really see it. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. But essentially, I think it's like a little like pill like thing with a mirror, maybe. Yeah. I don't know, but it's. Yeah. I don't know, it's something cool to hold on to if you ever need to have something like storage for your pills or anything like that. I think that comes in handy. They always
make fun of me because I always have like a little mini first aid kit in my purse. So this is perfect. I can put a little Tylenol and ibuprofen in there.
Yep,
and allergy pills because we have allergies every
Well, I was about to say, and I'm so bad about like taking a Zyrtec. I take a Zyrtec about almost every day, or at least I used to. I'm not so bad anymore, but like in the spring, usually it's pretty
I have
bad.
to take allergy pills every
that.
single
So there you go. Yeah. So, it's that's another thing about me. It's like I love to be generous. I love to give, and even if it's not a lot, I mean, even if it's like a small little thing, it's something that I enjoy to do.
They're perfect. You picked perfectly.
Yeah. No, I you know what I mean. It's just sometimes I see things and I'm like, okay, like this person's getting this and this person's getting that, you know what I mean? So it's like, anyways, so yeah, it's like thank you again for being inspirational to like not just me but to so many of us, right? Like to our whole crowd of friends that that you're so close to. And so like also for like kind of like opening another part of my authentic self, which is like, okay, I have a story to share. And I'm excited for this book I'm reading. Again, I'm not in a rush to finish it because I have to go to more countries and and I think as more experiences build, I think I'm just going to continue filling it up. Yeah. So, but my ETA is maybe a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. So, pull this podcast up again in 2 years.
We're going to come back.
And we'll see if I really did and if I did, and we're just going to celebrate. And this is going to be a good throwback Thursday for us later down the road. But no, this is great. I mean, this is awesome. Yeah.
Thank you for being on again.
I heard I was a favorite, so I had to come back. I heard so many good things, and I mean a lot of great messages, voice notes, a lot of phone calls, lunches that I had with people. Like really enjoyed this podcast, so I was like, you know what, I want to come back, and so I'm always down to be a regular too as well. So yeah.
Yep. All right. Well. We finished. We did it. Yeah. Again, you're going to have to come back.
I will.
You're coming back. That's just that.
Yeah. I'm down. It's put me on the schedule whenever you say I need to come here.
Rotating. You'll be rotating guests.
Yeah. Exactly.
When our schedules align and we're both in town because we both travel a lot. So,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's true. So like whenever I'm in town, but I mean, and so like I'm still praying about, do I come back to Dallas? Because California's still on my mind. Yeah. California's still on my mind. California's still on my mind. It's like, and like every day, or not every day, but like maybe week to week, I'll do research and I'm like, like apartment searching. I'm like, this is not so bad. I can afford that. Like, and I'm maybe an hour from the beach, I can make that trip. And so like, but we'll see what God says. Yeah. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, guys. Well, until next week, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week. Bye.
Ciao. Arrivederci.